You may have seen my shorts on storms in Gunung Kidul. Well, since we got here, it's rained most days. But for the last few days, it's been quite, well, I wouldn't say heavy, but persistent. And on Friday, it resulted in a power cut that lasted some 20 hours. And right now we're in another power cut. Goodness knows how long it will last. So we only had one day of power back. And of course it causes immense disruption to our lives. Not least as our water is pumped. So therefore we cannot get access to water, which effectively means that we can't wash. I mean, if it goes on for a long time, we do come up with a way of washing, but, not knowing when it's coming on, we sort of avoid washing until we have to, or not have to, but, until we give up on the thought that the power's coming back on soon. And of course, being Muslims, that means that we can't really pray. So there's many restrictions. The other thing is that our garden pools. So we have pools of stagnant water in the garden, which means that we get mosquitoes. And because there's no fans on, we get bitten quite regularly by mosquitoes. So, it does cause massive disruption to us. Right now, well, obviously we have no internet. The battery on my laptop has gone now, and the phone battery goes regularly, and actually the phone coverage isn't strong enough for the internet at the moment. So we're very restricted in what we can do. But to a certain degree, I rather enjoy the time to think, to contemplate. I don't get uptight, as my daughter did, and more on that later. But yeah, I somewhat welcome it, and it sort of reminds me of what we have to be thankful for, and reminds me that, God is all-powerful, that these things that we think are so important, the internet, washing, not being bitten by mosquitoes, are all sort of gifts to us that can be taken away very, very easily. You may recall that a neighbour's cat befriended me, or befriended us, that we called Lucky. And while we were away one time, he died. Most likely it was a road accident, because I did see him chasing after motorcycles. But just maybe, well, the owner certainly felt this, that he'd been purposely tortured. Now, I know that sounds incredible, but knowing my brother's use of black magic, and knowing his sort of psychopathic personality, and that he'd seen my wife making a fuss of this cat, Lucky, I have to consider it a possibility. So anyway, Lucky had a sister. You may have seen her on the shorts. She was originally called Melly, but I bought her for my wife, and we've rechristened her Mochi, or Moochie. And she's absolutely wonderful. She's a beautiful cat, and she means the world to us. She really does. She's such a lovely cat. And my stepdaughter, my youngest stepdaughter, and we have two cats in Jakarta, but she saw the picture of the cat, and within 2 days she was on our doorstep. because she wanted to be with the cat. But she only stayed 3 days, because on the third day, we had the power cut for 20 hours. And she simply couldn't live where we do with no power, without the internet, And I see a lot of people, I mean, even people who want to communicate with me, say from the UK, they cannot understand that there are times when I'm without use of the phone, without use of the internet, and it's like, well, why don't you go to an internet cafe? Well, I don't have a car, and I don't know where the nearest internet cafe is, and, I'd have to walk down the mountain even if I was to get a bus somewhere, so I've got a sort of 40-minute walk down and a 40-odd minute walk back to catch a bus that I don't know to where I don't know, So, people are so uptight. And yeah, my stepdaughter, that evening sort of collapsed. She demanded to go back to Jakarta immediately. Well, it's not really that possible in where we live. So we persuaded her to wait until the next morning, and she did, and she left the next morning. So she only stood it, even though she'd come just to see the cat. She could only be with us for 3 days because of these power cuts. And this sort of, what can I say, this compulsion that people have, they're driven not to be understanding of not having power, not having communications, and can't live without it. And I guess with living in the mountains, I've learned to accept these things, to be that way. And as I say, I somewhat welcome it as a time that I can think, time that I can do other things. But most people just can't live like that. And I have to wonder what this preoccupation is. That we've been, well, it's limbic capitalism, isn't it? We've been polluted by having to do compulsions, things that we just have to do, things that we can't live without. And no wonder when people go and visit sort of, I was going to say primitive tribes, but I don't like either word, but I can't think of a better way of describing it. But people who don't live in this modern society, and they cannot comprehend how we are and how we're destroying ourselves. And I can completely understand that now, completely understand it. Now, the other thing that has sort of been concentrating my mind is that last Eid, or last, what we call Lebaran, the end of Ramadan, some of the local children, because we were away, came to my beloved passion fruit vines, and they've taken an interest in them for some time. What they don't seem to understand is that the passion fruit isn't ready until it drops. So they can't understand when they see these passion fruit on the vines that they're not yet ready to eat. And what they did was they pulled the vines, tugged at the vines, and all but killed the plant. We've not had passion fruits for 1 year now as a result. It is now recovering. There is fruit on the vines, but none of it has dropped yet. So passion fruit, which I absolutely adore, I've not been able to have for 1 year. And don't know if it's the same children. But while we were away the last time, we have wild strawberries. They're sort of Javanese mountain strawberries. They're somewhat in between strawberries and blackberries. And they did the same. Fortunately, that plant has recovered very well. And I have had some strawberries since I've been here this time. And I'm not blaming the children, but they don't know any better, you know. But it seems to me that they're behaving in exactly the same way that those people who see themselves as our betters behave towards us. Now, I'm forgiving of both, or forgiving is the wrong word, understanding of both. But, you know, to destroy plants so that they don't bear fruit for anyone, just for your immediate gratification. And as I say, the passion fruit isn't ready until it drops. So goodness knows what they got from taking the passion fruit. But it's meant that I haven't been able to enjoy passion fruit for 1 year. And it seems to me that this is just how the elite have behaved towards us. Yeah, I need to be understanding. But the elite do behave like children, don't they? And this reinforces it to me. Now, I mentioned my passion fruit vines, and I think the true majesty of God is revealed to me by my passion fruit vines. I know. But, you know, I tend for them, I care for them. And as I say, you know, the children pulled down the vines, and I'm slowly watching them grow back. And that's, of course, what happens, you know. If there were to be a nuclear Armageddon, the world would eventually grow back, maybe without man. But God doesn't care if we destroy ourselves. The universe would go on. And it's the same with the passion fruit vines. They're growing back. And at first, the bees disappeared. So even when they got flowers, they weren't being pollinated. But slowly the bees came back, and, you know, I watched the bees pollinating them. And, you know, maybe an hour after they've been pollinated, the flowers change as they begin to form a fruit. And it's a miracle. You know, it really is. This is the gift of life that God has given to the world. A gift that we shouldn't take lightly. You know, and there's a natural order of things that we think we can control, such as the children pulling at the vines, thinking that them taking these passion fruit that weren't ready was some great thing, great achievement for them, when it was exactly the opposite. If they'd let them be, there would have been plenty of passion fruit for them and for me, because I always give them some when they're ready. But, you know, like my daughter and being unable to be without a mobile phone for 20 hours, we're just tied up in the minutiae of nothingness and not respecting God's creation. We don't have any patience, no patience at all. And time is a human construct, so we've got no patience for something that we've developed. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. We have to get much closer to being back with nature. And of course, this does follow on from a recent vlog I've done, whereby I was explaining that I found it very difficult to sleep or get a decent night's sleep in Jakarta because of both of my daughters and our niece stay awake all night. And they don't make a lot of noise, but they do make some noise, and they wake me up, and I find it difficult to get back to sleep afterwards. What's the reason why they can't sleep? Well, they're on their mobile phones all night. You know, they are addicted to their mobile phones. And of course, that's the intention. That's what limbic capitalism does. But certainly for my eldest stepdaughter, it appears to be harming her health. And I think to a certain degree it is my own. Because as I say, I get up often to use my phone as well. So, you know, I do understand it. But I do worry about humanity. I do worry about these addictions that we have, these compulsions. It's almost as though we're filling our life with minutiae, with narcissistic, I was going to say trinkets, but these are just services, aren't they? So narcissistic distractions, rather than thinking about what really matters, and maybe what's really going on in the world, particularly as we seem to be hurtling towards war. You know, and who of us wants war? Who of us wants war, you know? And we're so distracted by our mobile phones, by the promotion of tribalism, the promotion of hatred, that we can't see that war is not in anybody's interest, ever. You know? Is that me being a pacifist? Maybe, but you know, it's more deep-rooted than that. It's that this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And we're just being diverted by this constant barrage of narcissistic hooks, if you like, to keep us active. And I do worry about not only my daughters, but humanity because of that. Now, as I say, we've bought this new cat, Moochie, for my wife, but also for me. I mean, she's lovely. And it seems to me that we've got so much to learn from animals. And, you know, maybe that's the point, that animals are sent to remind us of the majesty of God's universe, of all his creation, and maybe also of how we should lead our lives. Because Moochie just gives us unconditional love. Now, of course, we feed her, and very important to establishing this bond with a cat is feeding them. She's not that old, and my wife cuddles her and carries her around with her, you know. She's formed this tremendous bond with her. But Moochie gives unconditional love. You know, if we weren't feeding her, my wife wasn't carrying her around, she'd probably still be very loving. And Moochie doesn't have a mobile phone. You know, she doesn't make war. I mean, the local cats do fight, but it's normally the toms, and it's normally over females, you know. Which is exactly how life used to be when I was growing up as a child. We'd all go to the local dance, and there'd be fights break out over girls, you know. I'm not saying that's a good thing, I'm just saying that it seems much more natural. It's more natural than going to war with another country, isn't it? Or group of countries, you know. And I do feel that animals are placed in our universe so that we can learn from them, so that we can appreciate. And you might be saying, well, doesn't the fact that we can create mobile phones, medicines, whatever, distinguish us from animals and make us better than animals? And, maybe you have a point. But doesn't the fact that cats don't create nuclear bombs, cats don't go to war, mean that we're actually below them? And I'm sure some of you are saying to yourselves, it's all right for you up on a beautiful mountain in the tropics or equatorial. You don't have a care in the world. And it's true. But I'm susceptible to the same things that I'm complaining about. I've been learning Indonesian, ever since I got here, but I've been putting in between an hour and 2 hours every day for the last 4 years on Duolingo. And I don't seem to be getting anywhere, or not as quickly as I'd like. And they've turned Duolingo almost into like a game. And today is the day when the round ends, as it were. And I could be demoted unless I can put in some hours. But I have to do so. Well, I don't have to, but I get double points if I do it before 12 o'clock. But I don't have access to the internet, so I can't go on Duolingo. I can't do it. So, in all probability, I'll be demoted from the top tier. And you have to say to yourself, does it really matter? Why am I using Duolingo? It's to learn Bahasa Indonesia. It's not to play a game. It's not to be in the top tier, But it still gets at me. Still. I want the power to come back on because I need to complete a lesson it's now nearly 10 o'clock, within 2 hours. Because if I don't, then I don't get double points. And if I don't get double points, then, well, maybe I can resolve it. I don't know. And we're tied up in this minutiae, aren't we? Me, myself, yeah. And it's not just Duolingo, it's everything, isn't it? Including government services. They're all based on us all having 24/7 access to the internet. They're based on us not having power cuts. And the assumptions of the designers are that everybody leads a life like theirs. Which is why, people get so frustrated with me when I say, well, I can't reach you at the moment. I don't have any power, I don't have any internet. Well, we'll go to an internet cafe. Well, I don't think there are any by me, quite apart from the other reasons I've given. But everything is designed around how a software engineer leads their lives. And I know artificial intelligence is meant to be artificial. Well, it is artificial, but it's artificial stupidity, But there are assumptions placed in it, and those are the same assumptions that are carried forward. So more and more people are being disqualified from life, as it were, unable to do the most basic things because they've simply not been included. I draw my pension later this year, and I'm frightened to death of having to log on to a site and answer questions. Not least as, even in Jakarta, my internet is unreliable, And we're just excluding more and more people from the world. And of course, as we go towards CDCs, we're going to exclude even more people. I think people will turn against it. I think these things will fail because all these things that are meant to be labour saving and easier for us have now become more difficult, haven't they? And I think the other thing that we learn from cats, or from animals in general, is this sort of unconditional love. That our love is a love of ownership and control. And theirs is just pure love. So even our conception of love is the wrong conception. We've got it all wrong. And that to truly love someone, you do have to set them free. But it's only through loving yourself that we can really love others. And only through loving others that we can truly love God. So there's a lot to learn.